Humanity is going through difficult moments like never before. We have lost our loved ones with a glimpse of an eye like never before. Our lives have been affected dramatically like never before. Our relationship with our Creator will never be the same like never before. Our priorities in life are dictated to us like never before. Our freedom is no longer in our hands like never before. And life will never be the same after these difficult moments. Join our live Ramadan show like never before with Hatim Al-Abdissalam and engineer Muhammad Farooq on Oman FM, your nation station, every Saturday till Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. to discuss our lives like never before. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to the Nation Station. I'm your host Hatim Al-Abdissalam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to your show Never Before. And joining me in the studio is engineer Muhammad Farooq. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you today?
I'm great. What about you?
How's the family?
Wonderful.
And how's fasting?
Fasting is going fastly.
So Muhammad, today we have something that concerns all parents out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Muhammad, the pandemic has arrived in our homes suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody has expected this to happen. And even though that we heard that it started spreading in China in the beginning of 2020, but we never assumed that one day it's going to spread and reach to our lands.
Mm-hmm.
And it has. So there are so many challenges that we spoke about before,
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the pandemic. But one very important aspect or a challenge that is keeping the parents awake is their kids at home and their educational future.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that all parents are aware that the pandemic has started, and the announcement was made by the higher committee to suspend all school and colleges.
Correct.
Yeah? Some of the school they went forward and became proactive, and they encouraged the online platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So that studying can continue with students. But some schools were really struggling and didn't know what to do because they were not fully prepared for such a thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having young kids at home who are very energetic, who are used to going to school, seeing their friends, playing outdoors, just to keep them inside as prisoners for 24 hours for a month is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Because you either have enough activities to attract their attention and keep them occupied, or you're going to lose your mind. Yeah. Now there is a challenge, Muhammad, for parents. There are two groups of parents, or let's assume there are three groups of parents. The first group of parents, their kids are not going through the online platforms from their schools, so they're sitting idle at home.
Mm-hmm.
And these parents are complaining because they don't know how to carry forward the educational material with their children, and what are they supposed to do. And of course, because the kids are not occupied, they play around, they mess around, they are noisy sometimes, and parents get irritated.
Mm-hmm.
The second group of parents are the parents who are lucky enough that they send their schools to particular
private schools who are continuing the educational system, it was not affected, and they have daily classes for their children online plus homework. So these parents are 50% happy that their kids' education is not affected and their kids are occupied in learning, and at the same time they are complaining that it is too much for the parents to bear, supervising the children every day for 3 or 4 hours online schooling, plus sitting with them and doing the homework again. They are not prepared for this, because this was done in the school. The third category of parents are the parents who are prepared. They are used to homeschooling and they know what to do. They have specialized materials for their children, and they have the skills to teach their children, and also they have the patience to bear with their children.
Okay.
I don't know, Muhammad, what's your experience through the homeschoolings? Maybe your kids are grown up, they are independent, they can take care of their own...
It's interesting that the school where my children go, like you said, this happened all of a sudden. It was like somebody flipped the switch and it was like from tomorrow there's no school.
Yes.
And then on a war footing, and I need to give credit to the school management, they came up with some kind of an arrangement. It's quite interesting because they combine different sections in one particular grade. So in the online session you have like 90 kids.
Mashallah, mashallah.
One teacher. And the interesting thing is that half those kids are hackers. So some very interesting things take place, and it's very interesting and sweet to watch my little one, who's a student of fourth grade, sit in front of the surface and attend this class. So the moral of the story is technology is always more advanced than the people that drive technology. It's the human factor or the non-technical side of things that keep us on a back foot. Now that there was an emergency, we started to look around, and whatever technology we could get our hands on, we did it. So my question is, if the school was able to provide online arrangement in, let's say, less than a week, why they were not able to do it in the last 10 years? I mean, the distant learning technology has been around for, I would say, more than 20 years. I've seen professors teach classes when I was in university in States, and since then technology has come a long way. And around the world right now, because of the COVID-19 situation, we have schools and educational institutions closed in more than 100 countries in the world, and approximately about 1 billion children are out of their classroom environment.
Yes.
But the good news is that children are born learners, and homeschooling, it can turn into a major lifestyle change. And initially, the way things used to be, that people did not have too much faith in distant learning. I remember when I started doing my degree online, there were a lot of eyebrows raised.
Yes.
Will it be the same as the real thing? Will the degree be accepted, and so on and so forth. And I can compare, because I did one degree in the normal brick and mortar setup, meaning a physical university.
Yes.
And then I did my master's online.
Yes.
And what I realized, that in my master's they made me do more work than was given to me in my normal university. So when we tackle this issue, all sorts of technology is available. That's not an issue. It had been available, it was just never used. So it was a cultural thing. Like, as an example, we've got mobile calls for a long time which are available, but it's only these apps which got us in the habit of using those things by making them fun, by adding things to them, by giving us the power to customize them. So the uptake of technology is a personal thing. It's a human thing. It's not limited by what kind of gear is available or what kind of software is available online. And I think that education will never be the same again after we go through this phase of coronavirus. Once people who have gotten used to the ease and they have gotten used to the benefits, I'm sure they would not like to leave and go back to the old ways. Now, having said that, I'm not trying to say that they're totally going to disengage from the face-to-face interaction which is involved in a normal classroom environment. So I look at it as a blended approach moving forward. However, down the line, in not so far distant future, we're going to get used to this anytime, anywhere education or gaining or consuming of beneficial knowledge. So it won't be limited to where we wake up our kids early in the morning, we dress them up, we force them to eat breakfast, and then we hand them over to a driver who drives them, for X number of minutes or X kilometers and drops them in a physical building somewhere, and they spend the whole day there and then they come back tired. Everything else has changed in our life drastically. It is changing. So what makes us think that an education system which is from yesteryears will serve us, or I would say serve our children, the way it served us or it served our parents?
Yes.
So this change was long overdue, and the COVID-19 situation is acting as a catalyst to bring about this change in a faster way.
Yes, the funny part is that my kids at home, they were always looking forward to sitting at home, holidays, having a break from school. Every day we go to school, and now we want to have quality time at home. And when the pandemic started and they were forced to be at home, now after a month, my kids they came to me and they said, Dad, we miss school and we want to go back to school. And this brings to my attention that school is not only about the learning experience, it's about your friends, it's about communication skills, it's about a lot of things. The whole idea, the process, the discipline, and so on, that is all part of that educational system, interacting with your teachers, face-to-face interaction. And I thought that kids being in this millennium, they are attracted to technology and so on, they would love the online schooling, but it turned out to be somehow the other way around. So I don't know, maybe this is different from one household to the other, but this is what I experienced from my kids, and I have noted down a few challenges that we are going through as parents, and we will discuss about them during the show.
Well, I mean, one of the things is the screen time has increased definitely, and this is something which is a big concern for most of the parents. Students, while we are very adaptive and we go for new things and we try new things, but it's difficult to go cold turkey and just flip a button and leave the way you used to do things for X number of years and adapt to the new one, especially for children. So that's why they're telling you about the school.
Okay, Muhammad, we have our first caller for today, who is Mrs. Chantal Blake, who is a freelancer, writer, and a women's health educator, who is also home educates her own 2 children in Oman. Assalamu alaikum, Miss Chantal. I'm fine. How are you today? Thank you for being part of our show today. And today we're talking about homeschooling. As you know, Miss Chantal, that a lot of parents are going through the process of homeschooling now because of the pandemic, and some of them are struggling because it is the first time this happens to them. And you have been practicing the homeschooling experience with your kids for the past few years, and can you please share some light on what is homeschooling and how it is done and what is needed to be done in regards to parents? Yes.
Whether their children are in school or out of school,
Yes.
all of us are experiencing a kind of collective global trauma in a sense. We're not allowed to go out. We're not allowed to see our loved ones and do the activities we normally participate in. So I think firstly to let people know that those of us who have been homeschooling all along, we're having a hard time too. This is not something like we've ever experienced before. But I do want to say that it's really important to realize that home is home and school is school. The idea that you need to replace or bring school home, it really is not an intuitive thought. Children have different associations when they think of home. They think of connection,
Yes.
they think of family, and they think of love. And so trying to pressure ourselves to bring school home as opposed to making home an educational environment is a lot more of an achievable task.
Yes. Now, when you went through the homeschooling, Ms. Chantal, did you have specific material to go with your kids, or was it did you use online platforms?
For me personally, I choose from different curriculums depending on the topic, and I usually pick the curriculum based on the strengths and the interests of my children and what teaching approach will work best with them. You know, education is a lot like shoes. It's not one size fits all. So it's really important to tailor an approach that is appropriate for your child's level of understanding, their learning style, and to really spend time getting to know what method or approach will best speak to that spark and that love of learning that you want to ignite in them.
And how do you grade them, Ms. Chantal? How are they graded in terms of comparing with other students who are going to school?
That a lot of people ask me that. You know, because I'm with them every day, I know what they know and I know what they don't know. My concern is not necessarily to give them marks. My goal is to see their strengths and help to strengthen their weaknesses, and to make sure they're progressing and developing in a way that is appropriate for their age and appropriate for their own pace of learning. So, for example, to speak about my own daughter, she's an excellent reader, and so her reading comprehension is super high. She loves reading all things and learns so much from reading, even on her own, but math is not as strong an area. So for me, grading her to say she has an A here or a C here isn't as important as just making sure that she has the tools of learning that she needs to learn whatever interests her and sparks her interest.
What I meant, Ms. Chantal, is, for example, you've been homeschooling your kids, let's say, for 5 years, and now they have to move on to the mainstream schools. The schools will want to know how they were graded previously, so that they can allow them to enter a particular grade, or once they finish high school, they have to be graded like everybody else,
like
whether they
achieve. Yeah. In that case, there are online programs that you can enroll your children in, and it will make sure that there's some kind of outside assessment of their grades. So, for example, if I wanted to transfer my children into a school, I would need to enroll them into an online school for a period of time so that they could have a transcript, and then I can use that to transfer them into whatever school or even university they may want to attend in the future.
Is there a challenge, Ms. Chantal, in regards to the kids when not interacting with other children who are going to school? So do they ever ask, why don't we go to school like other kids?
Yes, sometimes they do. Most of their extracurricular activities are with school children, so whether it's swimming or martial arts or even tutoring or classes. They're always in the mix of a variety of children who are both homeschooled and schooled. And yes, sometimes they're curious. They want to know what school is like, and especially when they imagine that they can play all day with their friends who are in school. And so there are times that they are curious, but then we also realize that there are certain strengths to being homeschooled, and there's a lot of flexibility in what they have the chance to explore and learn and enjoy during their day as well.
So for parents who are interested to go through homeschooling with their children, do they have to qualify themselves in any way or take short courses, or, because I know most of the parents, maybe it's been 20 or 30 years since they graduated from high school, and maybe they are not really updated with the educational material and so on. So how do they do the homeschooling for their kids?
Yeah, I definitely think for secondary school, there may be topics where you would need to seek out a tutor, so especially if your children are getting into advanced mathematics or science courses. But I would hope that every parent is at least able to give their children the support they need for elementary education, basic reading, writing, arithmetic, and not to neglect that life skills are a huge part of education, and it's another way that we can learn real-world math and management skills. So baking and cooking and just experiencing also is another level of education that we shouldn't neglect. But I definitely think that parents should know when they are in over their heads. Picking up a physics book after you haven't read it in a long time can be really daunting. But for lower level primary school children, elementary school children, I would like to believe most parents have the tools that they need to brush up and help their children and support them.
My final question for today, Ms. Chantal, please bear with me, because this is very new to me, homeschooling.
Sure.
What will encourage parents to go through the route of homeschooling and be away from the mainstream schooling system?
What would motivate parents?
Yes.
I would say the opportunity to deeply know your children and what excites them, what their interests are, and what their aptitude is. It's also really great to have a day and a curriculum structured around what your family values and what your priorities are. That can vary from family to family. And actually, I think that our ability to connect with our children can be quite deep, but it's not for everyone, and I don't think people should feel any guilt that they can't be with their children all day long. Though you do expect other adults to be with your children all day long, it's something to kind of reflect on, but it is an opportunity for deeper connection and a more enriching education that includes the family, not something that's imported outside of the house, realizing that education is not just what you pour into a child, it's what you bring out of them, and that's the part that really engages me and excites me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chantal Blake, for your insight on the topic, and I hope to hear from you soon, inshallah. Take care.
Certainly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Muhammad, what do you think of the experience of homeschooling?
It's we're going through it now. She touched upon a lot of interesting points and got me thinking. One of the things is you get to know your kids.
Yes.
Like she was mentioning, because in a class environment, you might have 20 or more kids.
Definitely.
And as an example, if the teacher has only 1 hour with them and then another teacher is supposed to come and teach another subject, that 1 hour is divided between those 20 kids. But at home, your whole hour is dedicated for your child.
Yes.
So that's one of the positive things I can see. So there's a more direct role in the learning process, which will hopefully result in a stronger relationship with your children. There's a diversified choice of learning, developing skills for children, and children can also participate in different recreational activities. So that notion that if a kid is being homeschooled, he or she is gonna turn up to be antisocial. That's not correct. And the other thing you can see, you mentioned this briefly in the morning, if we do homeschooling, then there should be no homework. And the other thing is you get to understand what your kid is good at, what are his or her interests, and then you can help them pursue those interests. So in a way, the learning experience would be more personalized and it'll be more tailor-made. And the other thing is, like, some children, they are not very aggressive, they're laid back, and in school environments they are prone to bullying or social pressure or peer pressure, what we call, and that at times really disturbs them. It impacts their self-esteem, and it even disturbs their learning mechanism. So in a home schooling environment, then this is something which is not there.
One of the things that I noticed when she was talking about homeschooling is the amount of time that occupies you as a parent with your kids. I understand that your kids is an investment. They're everything that you have in this world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you have working parents, it becomes a little bit challenging, and occupying the time of, if you have more than one, especially like in the Middle Eastern families, you have 5 kids, 10 kids, so homeschooling them would be a little bit of a challenge. But I like what she said at the end, that this is not for everybody. This is not to say that everybody should go through homeschooling. It is only specific for people who are capable, who feel the value of it, and
exactly,
and so on.
Exactly. And see, we need to look at different people have different instances. Like somebody, they might be having budget issues. For some, it could be a commute issue. For some, it could be a time issue. So, for example, if both parents are working and they have to reduce their hours so they can be at home and homeschool their kids, obviously there's a financial a reduction involved. So everybody has different issues, different circumstances, and they need to see if homeschooling is the best formula for them or not. But if we look at it globally, this is growing, and it's growing a lot, and it was growing even before the COVID-19 situation. Now more people are showing interest and investigating it, because for a lot of us, unfortunately, the school of your child becomes a status symbol. So it's like you come to somebody's house and you put your car keys on the table and they know what you're driving, yeah?
Yes.
So it's something like the discussion starts with, with which school, to which school do your kids go to? And that's a way of kind of gauging, what's your financial background.
And Muhammad, I promised you to tell you some of the challenges that some parents are going through when it comes to homeschooling. One of them is the long sessions. So now the kids who are going through online schooling, they have from 8 until 12 of long sessions in front of the screen. And then they get bored very easily, because you don't have that interactive environment like the classroom. You don't get to see the other students and so on. Okay, I think we have the other call online. We will continue this after the call. Our next caller is Miss Ilham Al-Maskari, who is Assistant Principal, Lower Primary in Ahmed bin Majid Private School, and a former homeschooling mom. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sister Ilham, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Sheikh Hatim, for the call.
It's an honor to have you on the show, Sister Ilham. We wanted to ask you about the homeschooling during the coronavirus and using different educational platforms.
Well, luckily for the world, hundreds of online educational platforms and resources existed pre-COVID-19. Hence, for some of us, it's really about using existing technologies, which under different circumstances, one wouldn't have had the need or temptation to explore. Many of these commercial educational platforms which schools adopt today are also open for parents and homeschoolers, making accessibility to resources very easy, convenient, and quite often at no cost. To name a few, some of which we are using in our school, in Ahmed bin Majid Private School, as an example, is Study Ladder, Seesaw, and Google Classrooms. What I would like to add here is that homeschooling shouldn't be confused with distance learning, that which most students are engaged in today.
Yes.
The scope of homeschooling extends beyond digital learning, and it is, or I like to see it as about everyday learning. It's about creating an educational experience out of every moment and activity at home. It is about enriching the learning experience and nurturing a love for learning. To follow some of these ideas and inspirations from my own experience, from my own upcoming release, 365 Days of Homeschooling, you can visit my Instagram IGTV at 365 Days of Homeschooling, as I have recently collaborated with our Moj for a sneak preview of some of these activities. So if you like them, you can stay tuned for some more.
Inshallah, inshallah. Now, what do you think is the future of homeschooling in Oman, Miss Ilham?
Well, if you were to ask me this a few months ago, my answer would have likely been different. However, as most of us agree, COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 has and will change our lives in one way or the other. Everything from lifestyle to education itself. If there was any point in time which one would have a positive outlook on the idea of homeschooling in Oman, it is today. In my mind, yes, I've always painted an ideal picture in which one day homeschooling will be a recognized alternative in Oman. And I understand that it may not be the most appropriate option for everyone, and that it may take time for the culture to absorb homeschooling, followed by mandates and regulations, etc. Yet, when it comes to education, there is no one-size-fits-all, which is why I would hope that one day all concerned stakeholders, such as the MOE, homeschool communities, educators, parents, educational consultants, to name a few, can sit together in one table for an action-oriented discussion and to collaboratively build the homeschooling framework for the country. One does not have to reinvent the wheel here, and that exploring best practices in other regions in the world is also a starting point. But then it's worth noting that the term homeschooling can be interpreted and practiced in many different ways.
Yes.
And this variation allows to pilot homeschooling in multiple scopes and dimensions. One example would be, and I'm just making up this term, semi-homeschooling. That is, homeschoolers can be affiliated with certain schools which have introduced homeschooling paths, meaning they're homeschooled under the supervision of a conventional school. If you think of it in some way, it kind of mimics what is currently happening today, the distance learning and the digital learning, and then school suspension due to the COVID-19 lockdown. This can be considered as an unplanned pilot and an ideal situation in which opportunities from crisis apply.
MashaAllah. Can I ask you a last question, Ms. Ilham? What got you into homeschooling in the first place with your kids?
Maybe perhaps my entire career has been involved in education. I've been involved in education, whether at higher education or in schools, at any one point. And I just wanted to spend that time and give to my children at home for a change. And because I was always a fan of some practices, such as the Finnish practices, educational practices, which aren't widely practiced in our country. And so I wanted to give that to my children, and it was obviously at the time when we weren't settled in the country either. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to board on that journey of homeschooling. MashaAllah.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ilham Al-Maskari, for your insight, and hope to hear from you soon, inshallah. Take care.
It's a pleasure. Shukran, Sheikh Hatim.
Shukran. Take care. So Muhammad, we heard another aspect of homeschooling from Mrs. Ilham Al-Maskari, which is interesting, Muhammad. You hear different perspective when it comes to this, and she clarified something very important, that homeschooling is totally different than what is going on now in our distant learning. But I like the idea of taking this gradually, and when she said there is a semi-homeschooling, which is affiliated with a mainstream school. Yeah.
See, what my take on this thing is, I really like this, that at least homeschooling should be offered as an option, because I feel one of the reasons why it hasn't gained traction so far is the fact that a lot of people don't know about it.
Yes.
And then there's some misconceptions when it comes to homeschooling. Like some people, they think it's only for people who are pursuing religious education, so it's something like an alternative to a seminary environment. Others, they feel that it's only for the wealthy and the highly educated people, and it's one step above the private schools. Some feel that it's only for special kids who are gifted and talented in a different way compared to the others. And others, they have this notion that, if we put a child in a home environment, he will or she will not learn the way he or she would learn in a group.
And I see this happening, Muhammad, in Muslim communities that are minorities in non-Muslim countries. This would be happening a lot, especially now with the change in some of the syllabus, where some things are introduced into in the syllabus of the children where they are not in line with the Islamic faith.
Exactly.
Like same-sex marriage and homosexuality. They are introduced in elementary school, and kids are taught these things, to accept these things, which is against the teachings of Islam.
Exactly.
So parents in these communities would seek for a better option, which is homeschooling for their own children.
Exactly. And a couple of things I want to add here. First of all, I agree this has been taking place in the West for quite some time for the Muslim families, where it becomes a matter of preserving the Islamic or Muslim identity. And the other thing which is surprising is that a lot of people of other faiths, they are also concerned about the level and the environment of public schools, and especially those who cannot afford the private schools, they opt to keep their kids at home for homeschooling.
Yes.
And we need to keep one thing in mind. It's not like you're going to damage the personality of the child by keeping him at home, because we see a lot of children who drop out of school for a couple of years to memorize the whole Quran.
Yes.
And then they go back to school and they adjust in the next level as per their age and corresponding grade with absolutely no difficulty. So kids are very adaptive. We need to see what is it that they really enjoy, which model they are okay with, and how we will know that is their level of interest and their level of results.
It becomes challenging, Muhammad, when you have more than one child, because each child have a different preference. And you don't want to favor one child over the other. You don't want to spend more quality time with one child than the other. So I would urge, like as a parent, to have a unified system at home, whether you are doing homeschooling for everybody or you are doing mainstream schooling for everybody. And don't separate them, because as we know through psychologists, that the envy and jealousy between children can be even deadly.
Exactly.
And you don't want to show your children that you are favoring one over the other. I think we have our third call for today, Miss Habena, who is a teacher and a mom as well.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Miss Habena. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm okay. I'm very good.
Alhamdulillah. Ms. Habana, thank you for joining our show. We're talking about homeschooling today. And
Yes.
as you are a teacher and a mother, how is the COVID-19 lockdown with you?
Well, initially, during the quarantine, during the pandemic, I felt it was very much easier for me being a teacher, focusing with my children and giving them a structure.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, they were responding very well initially. But as I feel for the last 1 week, 2 weeks, honestly, I feel the motivation levels have gone a little bit down,
Yes.
which means I have to use other strategies to keep them on their schoolwork.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've been experimenting with, Ms. Habana, with your children?
Yeah, they usually receive online lessons from their teachers.
Yes.
And morning time between 10 and 1, they are always, they sit on the table and try to do the work.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, when it was in the beginning, they were really excited, they were enthusiastic, but they would do the work. So I had to change that. And in the last 2 weeks, I've changed the subjects now to something different for them, something that they like and that they enjoy,
Yes.
to keep them engaged, to keep them busy in a positive manner.
Yes. I understand, Ms. Habana, when you have older students or older kids, then they can depend on themselves. They can log in onto the online platforms and do their own work. But if you have younger kids who need your direct supervision, you have to sit with them. It is sometimes overwhelming for the parent. How's it working out on your side?
Yes. When it comes to the parents, I feel with me it's a bit easier. Trying to supervise and trying to log in with the children. But yes, it does become difficult for the parents to engage in, for example, in Zoom meetings in the morning, classroom meetings. And if they are not used to it, and this is just like something that just happened abruptly, it becomes a very big frustration for the parents. But even it depends on the child. Some kids, they like learning on the phone.
Yes.
Some kids, they might feel like they enjoy it, so they just go and log in. For example, my son, he's in grade 3. His English teacher uses an application called Classroom.
Yes.
And he wakes up very early in the morning and he checks to see if the teacher has sent the message or has sent any video call meeting. So he's a bit motivated. So every child is different, and even when it comes to parents, some parents, it's like a shock for them to be homeschooling.
Yes.
Some parents, it's easy. So we all have different levels of parenting, or I can say what we're used to.
One of the challenges that we have, Ms. Habana, is when you have more than one child and you need to use the online platform, so you only have your phone. So sharing that phone with all the children at the same time, they're all having classes at the same time, becomes really challenging, because most of the families now, they don't use PCs at home. So they rely on the tablets or on their phone. So this becomes very, very challenging.
Yeah, I would suggest to those kind of parents, if you're only having one device for learning, maybe to give a certain non-academic subject, a life skill work to do, instead of waiting for like 2 hours for that phone that needs to be available. There are many other things apart from academic work that we can provide our children at this time, that they will be able to learn apart from just the schoolwork that they need. So instead of them trying to juggle with a phone, maybe they can do some art activity that will not require a phone. Maybe they could teach them a certain, if it's a little girl, maybe she could take her to the kitchen and show her how to maybe even cut an onion, something that will distract them from that one device that is available.
One of my last question for you, Ms. Habena, is wearing the two hats of a teacher and a mother.
Sorry?
Wearing the two hats of being a teacher and being the mother at the same
Yes.
time. How
Yes.
how do your kids respond to that? Do they
Yes.
treat you as their teacher, or do they treat you as their mother?
Very good question. Yes, alhamdulillah, mashallah. My kids have always seen me, and they always like to tell me, Mom, you're a very good teacher. The kids love you. And they get excited when I substitute a lesson or cover a lesson. So I think they view me also as a good teacher and very strict also. They say, Mama, you're a strict teacher. Yeah, because I keep them on their toes sometimes.
Yes.
So as a mother, they know that I'm a strict mom, and also as a teacher, they know they call me I'm a fun teacher. I don't make it too serious with them. Sometimes life, you cannot just be too serious all the time.
Yes, alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Ms. Habena, for the insight. And I'm sure the parents out there today who are listening to us will benefit from the tips that you gave us, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ma'as-salam.
So, Muhammad, interesting stuff. I can relate to most of what she said. Like my missus in her previous life, she used to teach.
Yes.
So she's very big on teaching, even with our kids at home. And being me working from home and them studying from home, it's an interesting cocktail. I get to see how challenging it is. And one thing I want to add, generally because of the whole environment, because of the changes in our behavior and rewiring of our minds, attention spans are going down.
Yes.
Social media is one cause, and there are other elements. So even with the current generation, children who are going to school, I don't expect them to sit there and focus and absorb what is being delivered to them for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, or 1 hour. I think we need to give them more breaks.
Yes.
For them to properly absorb that content and then to ponder upon it.
Muhammad, we as adults, we cannot spend in front of the screen more than 15 minutes listening to one person speaking, like a lecture or a talk. What about the kids?
Exactly.
So you can't expect them to just listen to the teacher for 20 minutes, just, explaining about a subject while they are not really interacting with the teacher.
What's going in their favor is something that you and I didn't have when we were in our elementary school, is the different mediums of consuming the content, what we call knowledge.
Yes.
In our days it was read a book or listen to a teacher.
Yes.
Or at the most, in later years, watch a program, some kind of educational program on TV, which was very rare because generally it's entertainment and most of the time trash on TV. Okay. And later on I would share my experience that I really enjoyed taking some courses in the community college.
Yes.
In the evening, while I was doing my engineering in the morning in the main university. And one of the reasons they got me interested was that on the local cable TV, they used to broadcast these small classroom sessions about economy, accounting, marketing. And me being a student of engineering, for me it was something very interesting. And that laid the groundwork for me to later on go and get my MBA.
Mashallah.
So there is goodness in this thing. So, and as we move forward into the future, as the trainings move more towards more of an immersive experience where you have the virtual reality and the augmented reality, so things would not be so static and so boring, if you want to call them. So there will always be variety. Right now we have voice, video, and data. Next would be experiences. So if we can engage all 5 senses that we have, and that goes for our children as well. I am hoping that they would be able to spend more time. Yes, they can take breaks in between, but more or less, because see, a lot of the times there are forced migrations.
Yes.
I might really enjoy sitting in a classroom the old-fashioned way.
Mm-hmm.
But if economy is going to dictate that it's feasible to have everything online, because it saves commute time, it saves pollution, it saves petrol, it saves expenses, whatever. So the general society is going to go in that direction because we are driven by economy. They're not going to make a university just because I like sitting in a room and listening to someone. Okay, so it's like majority wins. That's what I'm saying. Right now we're in a phase of blended education, but I see it more and more going towards online, pretty much, let's say 80-20.
Yes.
Because I see my children and my friends' children, you talked about like one phone in the home. And after this COVID-19 started, one of my friends, he called me and he said, which mobile should I buy? And I asked him why. He said, because my kids are memorizing Quran and the school is out. And I don't want the three of them fighting over the same phone. So I need to get more devices. Okay. So from the, like you said, from the desktops to the laptops to the pads and to the mobiles, these are just channels or mediums of transmitting knowledge. And whatever direction they take us in, as a majority, we would follow.
Yes.
So I think education or knowledge gathering will become more and more interesting and exciting. And by the way, that goes for the educators also. The role of a teacher is going through a huge transformation now, from being
physically,
exactly, from being the delivery person of the knowledge to the facilitator, and now to the co-creator of the content.
And I think it's not even easy for the teachers themselves going through this pandemic and learning about this technology.
Exactly.
Maybe some of them, they've never used it before.
Exactly, it's a learning curve.
It's a learning curve,
Yeah.
and it's good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to touch on working parents. I know during the pandemic most of the people are at home,
Mm-hmm.
but you have parents who are in the front line, like doctors, nurses, policemen, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
They are not at home with their children.
Right.
So my urge is for schools to facilitate a way that they can help these parents who are not at home at the moment, so to have flexible hours for them, or recorded session,
Exactly.
or any way, or any other way. And then you have government schools as well, which are still on hold. Some of online platforms are there, but nothing is yet very clear on what is the way forward. And many students are really worried and concerned, and parents
I'm sure
concerned.
I'm sure they must be working on it, because as far as the network and the backbone is concerned, most of the work is already done.
Yes.
In terms of the front end, providing students with economical devices and getting them into the new mode of operation, this would be done. Like we are facing it now on a ad hoc basis. That would be more planned and more permanent, but it has to happen.
Yes. The grading system is also a challenge.
Yeah.
Where at the moment, Muhammad, I am sitting my exams, my online exams through the college, and it is multiple choice exams, but it is very difficult to grade students in these circumstances, because the institution has to trust that the person sitting the exam is the student himself and not someone else.
By the way, now there are online monitoring systems as well,
Yeah.
where they monitor you when you're taking the exam, to make sure there are no books open, and
Which are not implemented yet.
implemented yet,
yeah.
but in some places, like in states, I know for sure they're implemented.
Yeah,
and
we're
using
moving towards that, inshallah.
Mhm.
And also I would like to mention the safe online platforms for this learning. So recently we heard about Zoom, that it is not safe, and so on, and maybe other platforms are not safe for video online learning. So we need to be careful. We need to consult experts in this area and find out more about this. We have an Omani engineer, Mr. Warith Al-Ma'wali, who him and his team in his company, they came up with an application for video conferencing, which is very, very safe, and it has been implemented and used today.
Wonderful.
Here I wish if I remembered earlier and we could have called him. Next, Muhammad, is the internet bills. You know, I have fellow students who are with me in the college. They come from the villages, the other cities, and they are based here in Muscat, and now they have to attend these classes through their mobile phones, and maybe they have prepaid SIM cards, and it is consuming a lot of their data, and this has become a challenge as well.
So I'm sure the local landscape, the regulators, the operators, they look at this opportunity and they'll come up with packages which can entertain such instances, you know.
And also I would urge parents to brush up on the skills of communication skills of their children while they're at home, for bonding with their kids, to have the one-to-one sessions, to talk to them, to explain to them, to play with them, which is also something that can be replaced because of the school activities are not happening now. So the parents can play with their children.
Yeah, combine education and entertainment and provide them edutainment.
Yes, and kids learning experience, like Sister Ilham and Sister Chantal mentioned this, the kids and Miss Haben as well, the learning experience, it shouldn't be only about the studies in the books. It can be anything. You know, you can go out to the garden and experience how to grow a plant. You can do recycling. You can, you name it. There are unlimited things that you can do with your children to keep them occupied. I know parents are on their toes during this period, and they're praying day and night to go back to work, and not to have this burden. But guess what? We are stuck with this. We're stuck in this with our children. We have to live with it. We accepted to be parents in the first place, so we should take the responsibility of our children and take care of them.
Exactly. Yeah, I would like to say, when it comes to homeschooling or distant learning, please don't confine it just to reading, watching video, audiobooks, attending lectures, webinars, and like Zoom sessions, but make it more personal. Get into skills, whether they're soft skills like team building, communication skills, leadership skills, problem solving, or whether it's hard skills like, I don't know, you said going to the garden and growing a potato, or frying an egg in the kitchen in the supervision of your parents. So all these things will beef up the database of our children in a good, positive way. After all, they're our best investment. Islam tells us that after we are gone, our deeds end, and except for 2 or 3 things, and one of them is a righteous child who prays for us. So if we do their grooming in a really good way, it's best for us. So we should be greedy when it comes to their grooming.
Dear listeners, thank you very much for tuning in on our program Never Before with me, Hatem Al-Absalam, and Engineer Muhammad Farooq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.